When we lead with love, we carry it 24/7. And when we teach with love, we make sure our students don't forget it. To be black and to educate, to be superhero without the applause. It's to show up and show out no matter the cause. It's to play for the students no matter the winner. Because when we work arm in arm, the impact is bigger. Welcome to UNtenurED Podcast, where educators have a space to speak their truth. So tap in and listen to the very voices that mold our youth.
So welcome to episode 0 of our UNtenurED podcast, a safe space for Black educators, administrators, and leaders to tell it like it is unapologetically. Because here in our house, speaking your truth can never go left because it's your right. I'm your host, Yaya, and I thank you for tuning in to this unique experience. You know, since opening Sadie's back in 2022, I've had the privilege of meeting and connecting with educators in store and online that nod their heads emphatically when I speak of the professional journey of being a Black educator in public school systems. And, you know, while there are parallels in the journeys, there are unique experiences and nuances that make each story a worthy learning experience and really an encouraging testimony. And so it felt befitting to launch this platform because we are in a supreme era of truth telling, y'all. From the film industry to the world of comedy to the medical field, we are seeing folks step out on faith and speak their truth. And so why not in education too? And so from Philly to Buffalo, from Newark to Brownsville, yes, from all the way in Kentucky and back to Harlem, we have some really, really special educators in line coming to our UNtenurED podcast to speak their truth here with you. And when they bring their stories, we're going to be asking questions that matter and really speak to the heart of the issue. And so for those of you who don't know, I was very intentional with naming the podcast UNtenurED. And, you know, you might be saying, well, why does that matter anyway? And when I was looking at the definition of tenure, it had some really key buzzwords in it. I saw things like safeguard and ensuring effective teachers and creating safe spaces. And, you know, when I think about how tenure is really a milestone in the profession for teachers and principals alike, it really felt like something very appropriate to put as the name of this sequence, because we are trying to do something to talk about other milestones that maybe don't have formal names or formal tags in their experiences. And so when I looked at how the New York State United Federation of Teachers define tenure, and I'm going to give you a direct quote. They said, tenure is a safeguard that ensures good teachers can speak up for their students. I'm going to say that again. Tenure is a safeguard that ensures good teachers can speak up for their students. And then I had these sub bullets, and it said things like, let me think. Tenure helps safeguard children's right to an effective teacher and an effective education, that it gives teachers the freedom to advocate for their students without fear of reprisal, and that because tenure exists, that teachers in New York State can speak out freely on issues such as over-testing, cuts in academic programs, elimination of art, music, and language, inappropriate placements, any type of inequities going on in the system. And so that really made me pause and go, the freedom to advocate for their students, speak freely on important issues, a safeguard. I mean, the question is, what about before tenure? What does it mean if I choose to do all of those things and I don't have the safeguards that tenure affords? Do I not speak up about it? Do I hold it in my pocket until I receive tenure 3 and 4 years from now? And then the next question that came to my mind is, you know, what about after you get tenure? Does this safeguard really exist? So I get my tenure. It's a celebration. I achieved the milestone that's not to be thought of lightly. And then when I go to advocate for some of those same things, is it met with the same energy? Is it a safeguard? Are we really seeing that it's a layer of protection for teachers in speaking up to some of those things? And so for us here in this podcast, what does truth telling look like in schools, sound like, feel like? We're going to get a sense of that by the guests we have here on the show. What does support for truth tellers look like? What does that sound like and feel like? We're going to tap into that here and this as well. And so Untenured is our humble way of leaning into these discussions and giving ways to really navigate experiences that are unique to teachers and leaders of color in the K-12 educational field. And so who's going to be our first guest? Boy, oh boy. I mean, if you follow him on Instagram, it's S. Woodson. We know him as Mr. Woodson. He's coming to us from Philly. He's got a real dope, powerful story and message to share. He's going to be our first guest. And we're so hyped because he's coming from Philly to Sadie's. He was like, oh, no. I'm coming in store for this one. And so we're going to have our podcast. Sadie's studio is going to be up, live and popping, ready to engage in rich conversation with him. And we can't wait to hear what jewels he has to drop, what lessons he learned, and what he wants to tell unapologetically about his experience and speak his truth. And so we again hope that the naming of our podcast has given you a feel for the vibe that every mini episode is going to have when we have a special guest, and to tell you a little bit about what to expect in each episode. So it'll be an organic conversation. It'll start off giving a little background on who the special guest is. And then we have 3 micro segments. One of them is called Oh Hell No. And we're going to be tapping into a current event in education that is the choosing of the featured guests, and just have a little external processing and free flow about why is this something that everyone should be aware of, and why is this something that really is paramount to understanding the experience of being Black while being in public school, as a teacher, as a student, as an administrator, all the above. Then we're going to have a section that's called Deuces, like chuck up the deuces. I'm going to give each guest 3 options of things that are like technically popular in the public school system right now. And they're going to have to pick one to chuck the deuces up to. Like this one has to go like right now. It's a dire need. And it'll start off with a few ground ball questions. And then I'll turn up the heat a little and give ones that might have to really have us pause and think. Like if I had to choose which one to really remove from the system to make it better, which one would go first? And then the last section is going to say, they say, you say. And so I'm going to put out a general stereotype or a general issue that's going on right now, or a comment that's made when it comes to being Black and brown in education. And we're going to give the guests an opportunity to rapid fire give their first response when they hear that term. And so a few micro segments to not only keep it engaging, but to really have some thought-provoking conversation, a chance for real safe space for educators to just free flow, because again, when you are speaking your truth here at our house, it can never go left because it's your right. And so the last thing I want to share on this episode 0, we were so honored and humbled. One of our resident dope poetic souls, Fanta Balu, she created an original poem that actually you heard at the start of this episode, and you will hear every episode, which is really a poem that speaks to, when I told her the vibe of this podcast, she was like, I got you. Here's a poem, and here it is. And so we gave you an excerpt at the start of this episode, but what I really want to do is let you hear the full poem in its entirety. And it's about a minute, but it's a dope minute. And I'll be playing it right after this. And so again, we can't wait for you to subscribe to this channel. We are very excited about the lineup of educators from East Coast, West Coast, South, Midwest that are coming to either be in Sadie's Bookseum in person, or they're going to do a virtual podcast conversation with us, and we're going to bring it right to you via our YouTube channel. And so stay tuned for the first drop with Mr. Woodson. Follow him on Instagram, s.woodson. See what he's about and see why you should tune in for our really dope conversation. He'll be here in store at Sadie's from Philly. And, lastly, our Bookseum is a very unique experience. We aspire to rejuvenate, cultivate, and educate. And so in 2024, we were like, we want to do more. We're looking to elevate our space and get a wider platform for not only rejuvenating community, but cultivating a sense of belonging. And at the end of the day, educating, because that's what we're about. And we're more than a bookstore. And so hang on a little bit. I'm going to play Fanta's full-length poem. Shout out to Fanta Balu. Her Instagram is at UNtitled. And lastly, community, for those who are watching, stay true and speak your truth, because it matters 24/7.
When we lead with love, we carry it 24/7. And when we teach with love, we make sure our students don't forget it. To be black and to educate is to be a walking testimonial that we still care. That our history can't be erased because we're still here. Feeding the bright minds of our future, planting the seeds to help them grow, while acknowledging the barriers in place to stunt their growth. To be black and to educate is to be superhero without the applause. It's to show up and show out no matter the cause. It's to play for the students no matter the winner. Because when we work arm in arm, the impact is bigger. Welcome to Untenured Podcast, where educators have a space to speak their truth. So please, please, please tap in and listen to the very voices that mold our youth.